Hey everybody, so in today's video I just wanted to do a little bit of technical analysis for you and point out some things that I am a little bit concerned about. But before we go on, I do want to remind you that tomorrow Powell is going to testify in front of Congress. That is going to happen 30 minutes after the open, and we might see some crazy price action for the rest of the week. But now just going right into it, let's go ahead and look at these charts. So right now I'm looking at the MACD, and I am looking on the 1 year, 1 day time frame for DIA, which is the Dow Jones Tradable ETF. Now let me just go ahead and zoom in on the MACD histogram. So when we have this blue line crossing over the yellow, that is essentially signifying a bullish crossover. When we have the blue crossing underneath the yellow, that is a bearish crossover. So right here, we're about to have a bullish crossover. So let's just point out the last few times where we saw this happen. So when we had a pretty significant bullish crossover, it was right here, as you guys can see. So right here, we were basically at around 331. We rallied all the way to around 344. And then you can see that we started having this bearish crossover right here. And then we kind of just went back and forth, curling back underneath sideways. And then you can see that that bearish crossover happened right there. That was right around mid-February. And then we had that sell-off right there. So, now we're having that bullish crossover, which is something to pay attention to. Now, sometimes these crossovers can be a little bit tricky, like right here. You can see that the blue crossed underneath the yellow. That's basically a bearish crossover. But price action chopped around a little bit, and there was a lot of events going on here. Like right here, we pretty much had the summary of economic projections in December, and yeah, that's essentially what happened. And we had some inflation data. So you guys can clearly see that there is some crazy chop going on here, but ultimately we did end up selling off. Now, I do want to pay attention to the weekly because I think the weekly MACD is even more important. Now, if I'm zooming in here, the weekly MACD actually had a bearish crossover. Now, look at the last time that we had a bullish crossover. This was right around October, mid-October. You guys can see that once we started curling over, we had some pretty serious rally right here. So we basically went from around 287-ish all the way to around 348-ish. So that's a pretty big rally. But look at when we went bearish. So when we had the bearish crossover, that was right around September. So you can see right here it started curling over, and we basically made it to around 343 all the way down to that 288 level. So that was a pretty significant sell-off on this weekly MACD crossover right there. And pay attention to what happened right here. So right here is another anomaly. So when we had this bearish crossover right there, you guys can see that we essentially did nothing, and we were just moving up and down, up and down, up and down, and we're just chopping sideways. But ultimately, this turned out to be an entire area of distribution. So, we're just essentially just distributing this entire time. And then here's where we had that sell-off. So definitely some interesting stuff, Now let's just go ahead and look at the next ticker. So if we're looking at the next ticker, we're looking at DXY. Now if we're looking at the 1 year, 1 day time frame right here, we can see that this does look like it's about to have a bearish crossover. Now here's the conflicting information. If we're looking at the 5-year weekly, and we're zooming in right here, this looks like we're about to have a bullish crossover. Now pay attention to the last few times that we had these crossovers. So right here we had a pretty bearish crossover, and you can see that once we started curling over, we had a pretty serious sell-off on DXY. Now right here we had a bullish crossover, and this pretty much took us to all-time highs. So definitely some things to pay attention to. Now if we're looking at TNX, which is the 10-year yield index, let's go ahead and look at the 1 year, 1 day. So this does look like it could potentially curl over and have a bearish crossover, but obviously the conflicting information right here is the weekly. So if we're looking at the weekly right here, you guys can see that this is a bullish crossover, which is not good for equities. Let's go ahead and look at the next ticker. We're looking at Apple. Now for Apple, we're not going to look at MACD because I'm not really seeing anything too concerning there. But I do want to pay attention to the candlesticks and the actual price action, which which may be a little bit concerning. Now, today we did have a analyst upgrade, and it was basically some guy from Goldman Sachs who's not a very good analyst. If you look at his ranking, he's ranked very, very low, and his year-to-date returns are like negative 15% or something like that. So he's not a very good analyst, and you guys can clearly see that we had a gap up from that 199 price target that this Goldman Sachs analyst put out. But look what actually happened. So we pretty much closed right where we opened. So this right here is a gravestone doji. This right here is a shooting star. So in a previous video, I did accidentally call this a gravestone doji, but this is a shooting star because essentially we closed lower than where we opened, and we have this long wick up here as well. But do notice that where we found resistance was essentially the same area. So is the same process going to play out where this was resistance, it marked a reversal, and then we had a sell-off? Because that could potentially happen. We do have this gap to the downside. Now, what would be very bearish is if we fill this gap and we see continued downside, and if we break this low right here that we made, which is right around 144-ish. So that would be very, very bearish. But do keep in mind that we did just get a price target upgrade, even though it was from a pretty crappy analyst. That could still keep price action up here for a little bit. Now, if we look at SPY, we see something pretty similar where we also have this gravestone doji. Now, let me just zoom in a little bit. So yeah, if I zoom in a little bit, you can see that we pretty much closed the same place where we opened. We're barely up on SPY today. It's like basically like a fraction of a percentage point. And you guys can see that long wick right there. So interesting stuff. Do keep in mind that we do still have a gap to the upside. Let me see if I could find that. So we do still have this upside gap right there that's left unfilled. So, you know, maybe when Jerome Powell talks, we have some crazy, crazy rally, we fill that, and then who knows what happens after that. Do we just reject? Do we continue upwards? But, you know, right now, it's really up in the air right now. But like I did say, we are seeing some concerning stuff with the MACD histogram on the dollar, on the 10-year, and on the Dow Jones tradable ETF. So, oh, one more thing. I do want to talk about this right here. So right here, this is the expected moves. So this current price is basically the price that happened or where we closed last week. So basically where we closed on Friday. So do note right here that the high for the options implied move was 155.41. And if we're looking back on Apple, we basically hit that level today. So on the first day of the week, we basically hit the higher options implied move. So definitely something to take note of. Now, you know, if you guys don't have this, you know, do take a screenshot or something, and then just watch how these price actions move towards this high or towards this low. Because obviously, if we go below this, you know, it starts getting a little bit oversold. If we get above this, it definitely starts going a little bit overbought. And do pay attention to where these 50-day and 200-day moving averages are. So hope you guys enjoyed this video and have a good one.